Week 10, Vikings versus Saints. Let's talk about it. I don't think anything will top the win against Atlanta last week in terms of impressive victories under head coach Kevin O'Connell. And that includes last season's comeback win against the Indianapolis Colts. But in terms of this year, if you can pull this W off against New Orleans, it would be a close second to the Atlanta game. It's going to be a tough one. Offensively for the Saints, they're not flashy. They're a bit conservative. 15th in scoring offense. They don't generate explosive plays in the passing game. And when the chips are down, high stakes situations, they tend to struggle. 20th in third down conversion rate, 5th worst in red zone touchdown percentage. They love the running back screens, particularly to Alvin Kamara. In fact, for the Vikings defense, priority number one is to do damage control against Alvin Kamara, not just in the screen game, not just in the rest of the passing game, but in the run game as well, obviously. They have some pass-catching athletes in Juwan Johnson and Chris Olave, but what helps is that their quarterback, Derek Carr, is a bit risk-averse. I would say his sweet spot is it's in between the intermediate and the check down middle of the field, if that's even possible. If not, I would say the outside hash marks. For the Vikings defense, outside of Alvin Kamara, you need to make sure that the pass rush makes Derek Carr uncomfortable. I know it's a bit cliche. You can say that for any game, but don't just let him sit back in the pocket throwing darts over the middle of the field. In the screen game, which you're going to see a lot of. You should expect to see a lot of it. Communication has to be on point. Snap of the ball, boom. Okay, screen, left, right. Let's limit the yards after the catch. And for the secondary in the passing game, you need to simply win your matchups and you'll be fine. I know it's easier said than done, but the Saints offense, they're not going to necessarily knock your socks off. Now, the wild card for the Saints offense is Taysom Hill, aka Dollar General Tim Tebow. This man is a Swiss Army knife. When he's lined up at receiver, hey, alert. But even when he's lined up at quarterback, 99.9% of the time, he's going to do the Tebow thing out of Florida where he takes a snap and runs with it. But you have to prepare for all possibilities. Part of what makes teams so great is not just knowing your strengths and executing it at max capacity, but also thinking about what your opponents are possibly doing to try and counter your strengths. In other words, if you were facing you, what would you do versus you? The Vikings are one of the more blitz-happy teams in the league. I wouldn't be surprised if when Taysom Hill is at quarterback, if you show an all-out blitz. Forget showing, if you want to execute an all-out blitz. But you have to prepare for the one-offs, almost like special teams versus the punt. More often than not, the ball's going to get kicked to you, but there's a chance that the other team, they're going to try and be some sneaky sneaks. If I were the Saints, and Taysom Hill is out there, and the Vikings defense is showing an all-out blitz, I would say, hey, after the snap, show that you're going to run it or fake that you're going to run it, and then boom, actually drop back. You're going to have a one-on-one opportunity somewhere with one of these guys. Just find it and throw it up to them. Bam. He doesn't throw the ball often, but occasionally he does. In those situations, even if you want to show an all-out blitz, have at least one safety drop back after the snap to at least provide help cover to one of those receivers. Going to the Saints defense, the opportunities for Josh Dobbs, play action, tight ends, scrambling. The Saints going up against scrambling quarterbacks this year, Tyson Bagent, 70 yards, Trevor Lawrence, 59 yards, Jordan Love, 39 yards and a touchdown. The Saints have no pass rush. So for Josh Dobbs, don't panic. If all else fails, as far as your receiving weapons that you're trying to go to, you're going to have opportunities where the middle of the field is wide open. Just move up in the pocket and go. And talking about the Saints not having a pass rush, their defensive line is very poor. Christian Darrisaw, as of Thursday's injury report, was listed as a limited participant, but David Kessenberry last week I thought did a pretty good job. The play action with the tight end, specifically that combination, I would consider that a single package. Cole Kmet for Chicago last week against the New Orleans Saints had 55 yards and 2 touchdowns, both off of play action. Now, what really sucks is that on top of Darrisaw being listed as an LP, the Vikings have 2 tight ends, including their tight end 1, also listed as limited participants, TJ Hawkinson and Johnny Munt. So worst case, you'll have Josh Oliver as your tight end 1 for this game if Hawk isn't able to go, but we'll see what happens. Either way, you can get open opportunities for your tight ends, particularly in the play action. Even more so, what I noticed Saints versus Bears is that Cole Kmet often drew linebackers further and further away from the line of scrimmage, backpedaling, to where for Dobbs, it's a win-win situation. Because even if the window is not there for that tight end on said play, the linebacker dropping back in coverage, guess what? That's an opening for you in the middle of the field to worst case take off and have a scrambling opportunity. Versus their passing defense. The Saints' pass defense is elite, and it's not because of their pass rush, it's because of their secondary. They've got some dogs on the back end. Paulson Adebo, Marshawn Lattimore, Tyrann Mathieu. For Josh Dobbs, a turnover-prone quarterback, the targets have to be on point. Anything off, a little bit behind, these dudes will capitalize on it, bar none. But the Saints' defensive line, I mean, it's nothing to worry about, even with Cam Jordan out there on the field, which is funny because Cam Jordan, much like Jair Alexander, just loves to talk for no reason. On multiple opportunities, this man has gone out of his way to mock Kirk Cousins, even if it has nothing to do with Cousins in the first place. He wants to talk about this guy. The Rich Eisen show before the playoff game, I think that was 2019, laughing at him. And recently this summer, he had some sort of camp and he was coaching some up-and-coming players, I think high schoolers, college players, it doesn't matter. But he was just talking about how you want quarterbacks to think and not just simply play. Because the quarterbacks that simply play, they're not thinking. They're just executing what they already know. But if you can get quarterbacks in their head a little bit too much, they're more prone to make mistakes. And at the end of that, he said, we call that Kirk Cousins. And afterwards, he sat there just awkwardly, we call that Kirk Cousins, just sitting there looking around, waiting for an acknowledgement. And then the laughs slowly started coming in. It's like, oh, were you practicing that line for 10 or 15 minutes in front of a mirror? Kirk Cousins wasn't there. He's never around. In fact, on the field, it'd be one thing if it was a true beef situation. Both of these players, helmet to helmets, just get out of my face, almost like Aqib Talib versus Michael Crabtree. But it's not that. You've never said anything to Kirk Cousins, not from what I've seen. And Kirk has never said anything about you at all. What is it about him? Clearly, there's something about Kirk Cousins that is triggering for Cam Jordan to not only feel some type of way, but to go out of his way to try and mock him. That's crazy when he doesn't talk about you at all. So because of your mouth, much like Jair Alexander, I am rooting for you to fail. But getting back to the point here, Vikings versus Saints, the reason why this is going to be really tough is because even though the Saints offense, they're very conservative, their defensive line is whatever, what the Saints do well is twofold. They do a pretty good job of taking care of the football, and they do a damn good job of forcing turnovers. In fact, the Saints are tied for first in takeaways. You look at the Bears last week, interception, a DJ Moore fumble, a missed field goal, interception, and another fumble lost. They're tied for first in takeaways, but their turnover differential is +8, third best in the league. You have to not only take care of the football if you're Josh Dobbs, but even if you do have a turnover, for every turnover that the Vikings give up, the Vikings defense needs to make up for it. They need to make it as an even playing field as much as they possibly can. Because if you lose the turnover battle, it's curtains. You're going to lose this game. But I'm going to say the Vikings will win this game. It will be another nail biter, 21-20.